The narrow streets of Naples were settling into an uncommon quiet at midnight. Most of the day's clamor had died down. Only distant Vespa engines and the whisper of the Tyrrhenian Sea in the harbor far below hinted that the city was still alive. In a small cafe tucked on a cobbled alley near the old Spanish Quarter, Elena Bianchi stacked the last of the wooden chairs upside down on the tables. All evening, the scent of espresso had seeped into her skin. Now it mingled with the faint salt breeze coming through the propped-open door. Elena pushed a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear, her fingers a little unsteady from a long day's work. The sign on the front, Café Bianchi, named after her late father, was already switched off, and the warm glow of the inside lights pooled onto the shiny cobblestones just beyond the threshold. It was past closing time, but she lingered as she always did, wiping down the mahogany counter meticulously. Each cup and saucer was dried and placed back on the shelf with care. This cafe was more than just her livelihood, it was her family's legacy. Since her papa's death 5 years ago, Elena had poured her heart into keeping his dream alive. The neighborhood regulars said her coffee had soul, that it could cure the worst of days. She would always smile and wave off the compliment, but in truth, she poured all her quiet passion into every cup. It was, in a way, all she had left of him. Outside, a light rain began to fall, tapping softly against the awning. Elena stepped to the doorway and sighed at the sight of the drizzle, wondering if she should wait it out a few minutes before walking home. Naples' weather was fickle in autumn. Clear, starry nights often gave way to sudden showers. She inhaled deeply. The petrichor mixing with the aroma of coffee was comforting, familiar. Just as she turned to fetch her umbrella from behind the counter, the bell above the cafe door jingled unexpectedly. Elena's heart skipped. She was certain she had locked the door after the last customer left. Yet now it stood partially open, a gust of cool, rain-scented wind preceding 2 men who stepped inside. Elena straightened, clutching her cleaning rag nervously. "Mi dispiace, we're closed," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. The first man through the door was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a charcoal gray suit that looked tailored to fit the lean muscle beneath. Rain glistened in his raven-black hair. His face was arrestingly handsome, but hardened, as if carved from stone. High cheekbones, a strong Roman nose, a sharp jaw shadowed by a day's stubble. He paused just inside, dark eyes sweeping over the empty cafe with a keen alertness that made Elena instinctively hold her breath. Behind him loomed another figure, equally imposing in size, though with more brute bulk. This second man had the air of a bodyguard, his eyes hidden behind tinted glasses even at this hour, a bulge under his jacket hinting at a weapon. He shut the door and stood in front of it, wordless and impassive, his stance making it clear that he wasn't planning to leave just because she had said they were closed. The man in the suit ignored her polite protest about closing and walked slowly toward the counter. His footsteps echoed softly on the tiled floor. Elena's mind raced. The late hour, the locked door somehow breached. The guard, everything about this felt wrong, dangerous. She subtly reached her hand under the counter where a heavy cast-iron tamp, used for pressing espresso grounds, lay. Her father's old advice echoed in her head. Always keep something within reach, just in case. She had laughed it off then. What trouble could a humble coffee shop see? But alone at midnight with 2 strangers, she felt a tremor in her chest that she fought to control. The man stopped at the counter but did not sit. Up close, Elena noticed a thin scar slashing through his left eyebrow, the only blemish on his otherwise striking face. He looked down at the rag in her hand, then at the immaculate counter, and one dark brow arched slightly. "You keep a very clean shop," he said, voice low and resonant. Despite the quiet tone, it carried an unmistakable authority that sent a chill up her spine. "Grazie," Elena replied cautiously. "But as I said, sir, we're closed for the night. Perhaps you could come back in the morning. I'll be happy to serve you then." He tilted his head a fraction. He seemed to take stock of her, her petite form in a simple blue dress beneath her apron, the tiredness she tried to hide behind polite brown eyes, the slight quiver in her hand that still clutched the rag. Something unreadable flickered in his gaze. "Forgive the intrusion," he said, not sounding particularly apologetic at all. He slipped a hand into his suit jacket. Elena stiffened, but he merely produced a sleek phone, glanced at the time, and then back at her. "It is late, I know, but I was walking by and saw the light. I had a craving for a good espresso. Most places in this city," he added with a faint curl of his lip, "don't know how to make it right. They drown it or burn it." Elena found herself blinking in surprise. The last thing she expected was a complaint about coffee quality at this hour from a man like him. There was an accent to his Italian, not foreign but refined, from the north maybe, or perhaps just educated. Despite the rough edges of his appearance, he spoke with a controlled elegance. We take pride in our espresso, signore," she said carefully. Her mind was still urging her to find a way to get these men out as quickly as possible, yet her barista's heart fluttered with the instinct to prove her craft. But it's past midnight. The machines are already cleaned. His eyes locked onto hers, and the words died in her throat. He didn't glare. It wasn't necessary. His stare alone commanded obedience. 1 cup, he said, raising a single finger. It was not exactly a request. Elena realized her pulse had quickened. She glanced at the door. His guard still stood there, arms crossed, making it clear there would be no easy exit. If she refused again, would they leave peacefully? Looking back at the man before her, Elena had a feeling that no wasn't a word he heard often. Swallowing, she gave a tight nod. Please, take a seat. I'll make you the best espresso in Naples, she said, injecting a gentle confidence into her voice that she didn't quite feel. He finally sat, choosing the stool at the counter directly across from her. The overhead lamp cast a golden glow on the rich walnut of the bar and illuminated the man's eyes. She dared a fuller look at him as she turned to the espresso machine. His gaze had drifted to the photographs on the wall. Old black and white pictures of Naples, and one of Elena's father grinning as he held up a giant coffee bean sack on opening day years ago. The man's expression was unreadable, but at least he wasn't watching her every move now. Elena busied herself with the familiar motions, heating the machine, grinding fresh beans with soft whir, tapping the grounds into the portafilter. Her nerves steadied as she focused on her craft. If coffee was going to be her last act of the night, she vowed it would be a damn good one. She tamped the grounds with firm pressure, just so, then locked the portafilter in place. The machine hissed, and soon a thin stream of espresso trickled out, filling the silence with the comforting sound of brewing. Rich, dark liquid pooled into the tiny ceramic cup, topped with perfect crema the color of hazelnuts. The aroma wafting up was robust and nutty, with a hint of sweetness. On a whim, Elena reached for a small tin she kept on a side shelf. Inside was a mixture of spices she had blended herself, her secret touch. A pinch of cinnamon, a dash of cocoa, and a hint of something floral. Lavender from the bushes her mother once tended. She only added this mix for certain customers, those who needed an extra smile. It wasn't traditional, but her father used to say Elena had a gift. She could taste people's moods, and brew accordingly. Right now, her instinct told her this stranger carried a great weight on his shoulders, even if he wore it like armor. Perhaps a touch of warmth in the cup might crack through it, even a little. She frothed a small pot of milk to a silky microfoam. Normally, espresso in Naples was taken straight, but Elena felt compelled to craft this cup her way. She poured the espresso into a slightly larger demi-tasse, added a delicate spoon of the spiced foam on top, and carefully etched a tiny, artful swirl. It wasn't quite a latte art heart. She wouldn't go that far. But the design added a personal flourish. Sliding the saucer in front of the man, Elena mustered a polite smile. Un espresso speciale, signore, she said softly. He looked at the offering, one eyebrow lifting again in mild surprise at the foam's artistry. There was a tension in his shoulders that hadn't eased since he walked in. Now, as the scent reached him, he inhaled slowly. Elena almost imagined she saw that hard chest rise more deeply, the broad frame relaxing by a degree. He lifted the tiny cup to his lips and took a sip. Time seemed to pause. The man's dark eyes widened a fraction. He lowered the cup, staring at it as if it had uttered a secret. For a moment he was very still. Elena's own breath caught. Did he dislike it? Had she offended him by altering the espresso? That flash of concern was quickly overshadowed by fascination. She could swear a flicker of emotion passed over his chiseled features. So quickly she might have imagined it. A quiver in the steel of his gaze. A parting of lips not to bark in order but in something like astonishment. He took another sip, slower this time, eyes closing as he savored it. When they opened again, Elena was startled by the change she saw. The harshness in his face had softened, replaced by something almost vulnerable. He placed the cup down gently on the saucer with a soft clink. Ci l'ha fatto? His question came quietly, but it vibrated with intensity. Who made this? Elena blinked, unsure if she heard right. Prego? The man's eyes drilled into her, the earlier softness gone, replaced by a different kind of urgency. He switched to English, each word clipped. Who made this coffee? Elena felt a jolt. She had never heard those words spoken with such gravity, as if the answer mattered more than anything. I did. I made it, she said, raising her chin slightly. She didn't know why her heart was pounding. She only knew that this moment was suddenly charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. He stared at her, unblinking. Outside the rain pattered, and a distant thunder rumbled over the bay. The bodyguard shifted at the door, casting a glance at his boss, evidently unsure what was happening. The man in front of her, this stranger who exuded danger, leaned closer over the counter. Elena could smell the clean, expensive scent of his suit, mixed with rain and a trace of cologne. His voice dropped to a near growl. What is your name? Her lips parted. Something in his tone compelled an answer. Elena, she whispered. Elena Bianchi. Elena, he repeated quietly, as if testing how it felt on his tongue. The way he said her name sent a strange warmth through her, and she hated that it did. She should be terrified. He still hadn't even introduced himself, yet here he was in the dead of night acting as if she were the one who had caught him by surprise. Finally, he straightened a little. There was a new glint in his eye, a decision made. "I will ask you only once, Elena," he said. "Did you truly make this coffee yourself?" She nodded, confusion knitting her brow. "Yes, of course. There's no one else here." He studied her another second, then nodded as if confirming something to himself. A faint smile ghosted across his lips, but it wasn't entirely a pleasant one. It held a predatory satisfaction. "Bene." Before Elena could react, he reached into his jacket again. This time her hand tightened on the heavy metal tamper beneath the counter. But the object he drew out was a money clip, thick with large euro notes. He peeled off several 100-euro bills and placed them on the counter, next to the espresso cup. Her eyes widened. "Signore, that's far too much." He lifted a hand to silence her protest. "Consider it payment for the coffee, and for your time tonight." He glanced toward the guard by the door and gave a slight nod. The bodyguard locked the door with a decisive click and drew down the shades over the glass. Elena's throat went dry. She looked from the drawn shades to the man before her. Her instincts screamed that whatever was happening now was far beyond an ordinary late-night coffee. "My wait time, sir?" He pocketed the money clip and then fixed her with that dark, commanding stare. "You are closing the cafe, see? You won't be open again until morning." She nodded dumbly. "Good. You are coming with me." The words were calm, almost gentle, but they hit her like a physical blow. Elena took a step back, her hip bumping into the counter behind her. "What? I can't just leave with you. Who even are you?" His jaw tightened slightly, as if he wasn't used to being questioned. He hesitated a moment, then gave a small incline of his head. "My name is Dante Moretti." He said it quietly, yet there was weight behind those words, as if she should recognize them. Elena's eyes widened further. The name did ring the faintest bell, whispers she'd heard from some customers who spoke in low tones about local figures, or in news headlines half-remembered. The Moretti family? Something to do with business, shipping maybe? But there were darker rumors too, ones that trailed off whenever she approached. She felt a chill of recognition and denial. This couldn't be happening. Perhaps this was some misunderstanding. "Signor Moretti," she began, trying to steady her voice. "I appreciate your patronage, but I can't possibly go anywhere with you tonight. It's very late and I have to get home." He moved with startling swiftness. One moment he was standing calmly, the next he had rounded the counter and was right in front of her. Elena pressed back against the counter's edge as Dante Moretti loomed over her. He didn't touch her, but he was close enough that she felt the gentle warmth radiating from his body, saw the rainwater still beating on the broad shoulders of his suit. She had to tilt her head up to meet his gaze, and found herself trapped in the intensity of those dark eyes. "Elena," he said, and her name in his mouth was a quiet storm. "I never take no for an answer." He lifted a hand, and Elena flinched, but he merely brushed his thumb across his bottom lip thoughtfully, as if considering something. The slight movement drew her attention to his mouth, and she felt her cheeks heat at the inappropriate thought that his lips were surprisingly full, almost soft, in contrast to the hardness of his voice. He continued, each word deliberate. "You asked who I am? I am a man who gets what he wants. And right now, I want you." Elena's heart thundered so loudly she was sure he could hear it. This had spiraled far beyond a strange coffee encounter. Every instinct told her this man, this Mafia boss, she realized with dawning horror, was used to controlling people like pieces on a chessboard. She was just a barista who'd made him a good coffee. Too good. Her thoughts flailed for a way out. "Please, signore. I have family who will worry if lies do not suit you," he interrupted coolly. "I know you live alone. No husband, no boyfriend, not even a roommate." At her shocked expression, he added almost apologetically, "I make it my business to know things. Your routine, your quiet life, it's all remarkably ordinary." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Except for this talent of yours." Elena's mouth went dry. Had he been watching her? How could he know so much already? A spark of anger mingled with her fear. "Have you been spying on me?" she demanded, a tremor in her voice. He almost smiled at her defiance. "Not personally, but I have many eyes in this city. One of my associates frequents your cafe." He mentioned a young woman who makes the best coffee in Naples, perhaps in all of Italy. I admit I was curious. Dante's gaze fell to the empty cup on the counter. His voice grew quieter, as if confessing something even to himself. "I didn't expect this." Elena followed his eyes to the cup. That tiny bit of foam left in it bore the faint remnants of the swirl she'd drawn. Such a small thing, and yet it had clearly struck a chord in this man. He turned back to her, and the vulnerability she thought she'd seen was gone, replaced by steely resolve. "You have a gift, Elena. One I intend to keep close. Before she could protest again, he gently, almost courteously, placed his hand at the small of her back. The contact was firm but not rough, guiding her away from the counter. Elena was too stunned to fight immediately. The heat of his palm through her thin dress sent an involuntary shiver through her. "Wait, what about my cafe?" "I can't just leave it," she managed, her voice wobbling between panic and disbelief. Dante nodded to his bodyguard, who promptly moved to turn off the remaining lights and double-check the lock. Dante's lips curved in a shadow of a smirk. "It will still be here in the morning. I'll have someone secure it." He was already steering her towards the back door now, the one she used for deliveries, perhaps to avoid any onlookers on the street. Elena's mind raced. This was happening too fast. "This is crazy," she whispered, planting her feet as they reached the back hallway. "You can't just take me. I'm not some object you can own." Dante paused. In the dim light of the corridor, his eyes flashed dangerously. For a moment, the air was taut. Then he stepped closer, and Elena's breath caught as her back met the wall. He lifted a hand as if to touch her face, and she flinched. He stopped, his fingers hovering just above her cheek. She could feel the warmth of him, the tremor in her own body at his nearness. "I'm not going to hurt you," Dante said, voice unexpectedly gentle. The contradiction between his tender tone and the ferocity in his eyes made Elena's head spin. "But understand this, you are mine now. And I protect what is mine." His words hung in the air. Elena stared up at him, her heart in her throat. There it was, the claim, made in a dark alleyway behind her family cafe in the middle of the night. She should have been terrified. Part of her was, yet there was something else too. A dangerous thrill, as if an invisible thread had just tethered her to this man's fate, binding her life to his in that moment. Dante stepped back slightly, giving her room to breathe, though his hand remained at her back. With his other hand, he took off his suit jacket and, in a surprising gesture, draped it around Elena's shoulders. The warmth and weight of it was comforting against the chill of the night and the shock coursing through her. It smelled of him, expensive cologne with a hint of smoke and the rain. "You'll catch a cold," he said quietly by way of explanation. The consideration in that small act left Elena momentarily speechless. His bodyguard opened the back exit, and the night air rushed in, cool and laced with the scent of wet stone. Dante began to guide her out. Elena's eyes darted around the empty alley behind the cafe, searching for any savior in the shadows. But there was only the sleek black sedan now idling there. Heart pounding, Elena realized there would be no rescue, no knight in shining armor appearing in the rain. Only this dark stranger claiming her with the soft threat of protection. Gathering the last shreds of her courage, Elena turned to Dante, meeting his gaze directly even as he led her to the open car door. "You may force me to go with you," she said, her voice unsteady but determined, "but you can't control me. I'm not afraid of you." A lie. She was terrified. But in that moment she refused to cower. If she was stepping into the lion's den, she would not do it on her knees. Dante's eyes widened ever so slightly, as if surprised by her boldness. Then a true smile curled his lips, brief, wolfish, and approving. "Brave," he murmured. "You should be afraid, Elena. You have no idea what world you've just stepped into." With that, and with a final gentle press of his hand, he helped her into the car. As the door shut and Dante Moretti slid in beside her, Elena clutched the lapels of his jacket around herself, heart thrumming with dread and a curious, unwelcome anticipation. The car pulled away into the night, leaving the quiet cafe and the spilled light on wet cobblestones far behind. And as the city streets blurred past, Elena could only wonder what exactly she had awakened in this man with one simple cup of coffee, and what price she would pay for it. The drive through the night was surreal. Elena sat rigid in the leather seat of the sedan, Dante's jacket still draped around her like a protective cloak. The car's interior smelled of rich leather and a faint trace of hiscologne. Dante sat beside her, silent and pensive, the occasional passing street lamp casting fleeting light across his sharp profile. The bodyguard drove, eyes on the road, saying nothing. Elena's mind churned. She had replayed Dante's words in her head a dozen times already. "You are mine now." The sheer audacity, the arrogance, and yet he had also said, "I protect what is mine." What did that mean for her? Was she a captive, a pawn in some game she didn't understand? Or was she under his twisted version of protection because of some coffee-induced whim? The car wove through Naples' curving streets, climbing gradually into the hills overlooking the bay. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glistening. When Elena caught a glimpse of Castel Sant'Elmo illuminated against the dark sky, she realized they were heading toward the wealthy district of Vomero, or perhaps further toward Posillipo. Indeed, after a few more turns, the sedan passed through tall wrought-iron gates that opened at their approach. They drove down a long cypress-lined driveway. Ahead, an elegant villa emerged from the darkness. Soft lights glowed along a two-story facade of warm terracotta and stone. Manicured gardens flanked the entrance, the silhouettes of statues and a fountain visible in the courtyard. It was the kind of home Elena had only ever seen in magazines or on rare walks through upscale neighborhoods, a place of luxury and old money, far removed from her cozy, worn little cafe. The car stopped under a portico. Almost immediately, 2 men in dark suits approached. One opened Elena's door, startling her. Dante was already out on his side, issuing quiet orders to another man who had appeared, a lean fellow with graying hair, perhaps the steward or butler of the house. She heard Dante's low voice. "Tell Marco to put 2 men on the cafe tonight. No one goes in or out. In the morning, have someone notify her customers that the shop is closed until further notice." Elena's stomach clenched. He truly had thought of everything, moving pieces to ensure her world outside was paused. As Elena emerged from the car, clutching Dante's jacket around her, he was at her side in an instant. One large hand settled at her elbow, not harshly but with possessive guidance. She resisted the urge to pull away. There were too many strangers around, all of them eyeing her with curiosity or suspicion. "Come," Dante said softly. He led her up the stone steps. The double doors opened, revealing a grand foyer. The floor was polished marble, and a chandelier cast a gentle glow from the high ceiling. The walls were adorned with tasteful art, landscape paintings, and one that caught Elena's eye, a portrait of a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, painted in an old style. The resemblance in those eyes to Dante's was subtle but there. Perhaps this was a relative, maybe his mother when she was young. Elena had little time to take it in. Dante guided her through the foyer, dismissing the suited men with a nod. They dispersed, as if his silent command was understood without words. The older steward hovered nearby. Dante addressed him quietly. "Gianni, prepare the green room for our guest, and have Valentina bring some dry clothes. Elena is staying here indefinitely." Indefinitely. The word rang in Elena's ears like a bell of doom. She found her voice as the steward nodded and hurried off. "Signor Moretti," she began, trying to control the tremble. Dante, his given name felt strange on her tongue, but he had never told her how to address him. "I don't understand what you expect of me. You can't just uproot my life like this. I have responsibilities. A business. I can't simply disappear." He turned to her, studying her face. In the better light of the villa, the severity of his features was more pronounced, but so was the exhaustion around his eyes, a faint shadow, as if even someone as formidable as Dante Moretti was not immune to weariness. "I can and I have," he replied. "For now, consider yourself on a hiatus from your previous life." Anger flared in Elena's chest, beating back some of the fear. "You mean I'm your prisoner?" "Ospite," he corrected gently in Italian. "My guest. You have my protection, my hospitality." His voice hardened a fraction. "But yes, until I say otherwise, you will stay within my world." Elena's hands balled into fists under the jacket. "All this for a cup of coffee?" For the first time, she saw uncertainty flicker across his face. Dante glanced away, jaw tense. "It's more than that," he said after a moment quietly. "You wouldn't understand." "Then help me understand," she pleaded. "Because right now I feel like I'm being punished for doing my job well." Dante's eyes flashed as they met hers again. "Is that what you think this is? Punishment?" He stepped closer, and instinctively Elena stepped back, bumping into one of the marble columns lining the hall. Dante stopped himself, exhaling slowly as if reining in his intensity. "No, not punishment. Salvation." The word hung strangely in the air. Elena shook her head in disbelief. "I don't need saving." At that, Dante's expression grew haunted. He lifted a hand as if he might touch her cheek where a tear of frustration had escaped down to her jawline. But he did not complete the gesture. "Everyone needs saving from something," he murmured, almost too low to hear, then turned sharply as footsteps approached. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a crisp blouse and skirt, appeared carrying a stack of folded clothes. She offered a polite smile to Elena. "Buonasera, signorina. I'm Valentina, the housekeeper. I've brought you some dry clothes for the night." Her tone was warm, with a local accent. It was perhaps the first truly friendly voice Elena had heard this night. Elena managed a faint grazie as she accepted the clothes. A soft cotton sweater and drawstring lounge pants, clearly new or impeccably kept. Dante nodded to Valentina. "Thank you. We'll manage from here." He then beckoned Elena to follow. Clutching the spare clothes, Elena trailed him up a wide staircase with wrought iron railings. Her legs felt leaden, the adrenaline of earlier slowly giving way to exhaustion. At the top, they walked down a long hallway lit by low wall sconces. He stopped before a door at the far end and pushed it open to reveal a spacious bedroom suite. The decor was elegant, cream-colored walls with gold accents, a king-sized bed with an ornate headboard, heavy drapes that probably concealed a balcony and a view of the city. The green room, as he'd called it, had touches of sage and emerald in the upholstery, and a vase of fresh white lilies on a writing desk in the corner. Elena stepped in warily. It was more luxurious than any hotel she could dream of staying in, and certainly worlds apart from her modest apartment above the cafe. The carpet was thick enough that her feet sank slightly. She felt as though she were walking into a movie, not her life. Dante hovered in the doorway, one hand on the handle. "You'll sleep here. My room is next door." He inclined his head toward the adjacent wall. "If you need anything. Johnny or Valentina can also be summoned if you press that button." He indicated a small panel by the bed. Elena set the clothes on the bed, her fingers brushing the soft duvet. She turned to face him, crossing her arms to hide their tremble. "And what if I need to leave? To go home?" His face hardened slightly. "You already asked and I already answered. You're not leaving, Elena." She took a shaky breath. "This is kidnapping, you realize? You can dress it up as hospitality, but I'm here against my will." Something akin to regret flickered in his dark eyes. "I prefer to think of it as persuasion. I'm giving you an opportunity. Protection and resources far beyond what your old life could. In time, you'll understand." He paused, then added with a touch of dry humor, "If I truly meant you harm, I wouldn't have bothered with clean clothes and a comfortable bed." Elena bit her lip. He had a point. If he were a monster, he could have thrown her in a cell or worse. That he was extending courtesy complicated her feelings. Still, it was twisted to snatch her away like this. "I don't want any of this," she whispered. "I was happy in my old life, as you call it." Dante's expression softened ever so slightly. "Happy, perhaps content, in a small way, but safe? The city is not as harmless as you believe, Elena, and after tonight, your world has changed." He looked as if he wanted to say more, but he fell silent. Instead, he walked inside and over to the tall windows. He drew aside a curtain, revealing a set of French doors that opened onto a balcony. Beyond, Naples sprawled, a carpet of lights cascading down to the dark bay. Even at this hour, ships' lights bobbed in the distance, and the outline of Vesuvius loomed under a cloud-hazed moon. "I grew up in this city," Dante said quietly, still gazing out. "I know what it can do to those who are unprepared for its cruelties. I've seen good people broken because they were in the wrong place, the wrong time, or simply because someone with power decided to take what they wanted." He glanced back at her, his silhouette sharp against the night sky. "I have the power here, and I decided I wanted you safe with me. Consider it a stroke of fate, if you like, the same fate that led me to your cafe tonight." Elena hugged herself, both unnerved and strangely moved by the speech. It almost sounded as if he was trying to justify his actions to himself as much as to her. "Get some rest," Dante said, letting the curtain fall back. He moved to the door, pausing beside her as she stood frozen near the foot of the bed. For a moment, he looked as though he might reach out and touch her shoulder or brush that stray lock of hair again. His hand lifted slightly, but then he clenched it and let it drop. "We'll talk more in the morning. I'll have breakfast sent up for you." She nodded mutely, and he stepped out into the hall. Before he closed the door, he added, "Oh, and Elena." She looked up. His gaze bore into hers, an unspoken apology and command all at once. "Do not attempt to leave. My guards are under strict orders. I would hate for you to get hurt by misunderstanding their duty." It was a gentle warning, yet a warning nonetheless. Elena's throat tightened. She managed to reply past it. "I understand." The words tasted bitter. Dante lingered a second, eyes searching hers. Then with a curt nod, he pulled the door shut. Elena stood there in the silence, the reality crashing down on her fully. A soft click told her he had locked the door from the outside. So much for being a guest. She exhaled shakily and went to the door, testing the handle. It was indeed locked. Anger, fear, and an unexpected twinge of grief welled up inside her. In the span of a few hours, her life had been turned upside down. She pressed her forehead against the heavy wooden door, fighting the sting of tears. "Papa," she whispered, as if her father could somehow hear. "I wish you were here. You'd know what to do." No answer came from the silent room. After a few minutes, Elena mustered the will to move. The damp dress clung uncomfortably to her skin, a reminder of the rain and the chaotic evening. She peeled Dante's jacket off her shoulders and carefully placed it over the back of a velvet armchair. Hesitating only a moment, privacy felt strange in a place full of strangers. She went into the adjoining bathroom to change. The bathroom itself was larger than her kitchen back home, decked in marble and bronze fixtures. In the mirror, she saw a pale face, wide brown eyes still brimming with residual panic, and dark hair tumbling loose from its ponytail. She looked exactly as she felt, a small, lost cafe owner out of her depth in the halls of a crime lord. Because that's what Dante Moretti was, wasn't he? All the signs pointed to it. The guarded estate, the men with guns, the way his name made her recall hushed warnings. Mafioso. The word she'd been avoiding, thinking outright. Elena shut her eyes. How could she have ended up here? Because you made him a damn coffee that stirred some ghost in him, she thought ruefully. Who could predict that? She changed into the soft sweater and lounge pants Valentina provided. They fit reasonably well, though a bit loose in the waist and long. Probably clothes kept on hand for female guests, or maybe purchased new by staff at Dante's direction on a moment's notice. The idea of other guests made her uneasy. Was she truly the first woman Dante had whisked into his home like this? Perhaps not, though something in his demeanor tonight felt different, even to her inexperienced perspective. Dressed in dry clothes and physically more comfortable, Elena returned to the bedroom. Exhaustion pulled at her, but her mind refused to rest. She went to the balcony doors and hesitantly opened them, needing air. A small terrace extended out, complete with a wrought iron balustrade and a view that made her breath catch. Naples sprawled under the moonlight, the hills dotted with golden lights, and beyond that, the vast black sea merging with the sky. The rain had washed the air clean. Even from up here, she could smell damp earth and distant brine. It might have been peaceful, if not for the turmoil inside her. Pulling the sweater's sleeves over her hands, Elena stepped out and leaned on the railing. The cool night breeze tickled her face, soothing the heat of earlier tears. She tried to think logically. Dante didn't seem intent on harming her. If anything, he was disturbingly concerned with her well-being. But he had essentially admitted to having her watched and now confined. Perhaps he truly believed he was protecting her, but his presence was the very thing that endangered her now. Still, she felt a flicker of gratitude toward Valentina for speaking plainly. The staff's loyalty to Dante suggested he had earned some respect beyond mere fear. She recalled how he'd said the city could break people, that he'd seen it happen. Was that why he'd looked so pained when she claimed she didn't need saving? Who had he lost to Naples' underworld? Perhaps his mother. There was sadness when he mentioned people with power taking what they wanted. Everyone needs saving from something, he had said. What did he need saving from? A man like Dante Moretti would never admit to needing help. But in her brief glimpses, Elena had sensed grief and loneliness under his granite exterior. The way his expression changed tasting her coffee, it was as if she had given him back something precious he thought gone forever. The night air cooled her enough that she began to shiver. Hugging herself, Elena retreated back inside and closed the doors. Sleep, she told herself. Everything would make more sense in the morning. She approached the bed and found her phone on the nightstand. Her heart leapt. Perhaps she could call for help, but upon picking it up, her hope fell. The screen was black. The battery must have died hours ago, and her charger was at her apartment. Even if it had power, who would she call? The police? She imagined that scenario, telling them the notorious Dante Moretti kidnapped her. He likely had half the local force in his pocket, and the other half too afraid to cross him. And if she angered him by involving police, no, that could make things worse. For her and her beloved cafe too. She set the phone down with a sigh. There was also a new note next to it she hadn't noticed before, a handwritten card. It read simply, "Please let us know if you need anything. We are at your service, Johnny." A formal courtesy from the steward, perhaps slid in while she was changing. It struck Elena how even the household staff were treating her with respect, as if she were an honored guest rather than a prisoner. Maybe Dante expected obedience from his people, but Valentina's kind eyes and Yanni's note hinted at genuine concern. Did they see this often? Women abruptly brought here? Or was this unusual enough that they were trying to make her comfortable? Too many questions, not enough answers. Her exhaustion finally demanded priority. Elena turned off the lights except a small bedside lamp and slipped under the covers. The bed was heavenly, but it felt foreign. For a long while she stared at the ceiling, thoughts darting between fear of what tomorrow might bring and an unsettling curiosity about the man beyond the wall. In the silence, she listened. Somewhere in the house, muffled through walls or perhaps drifting from an open window down the hall, she heard the faintest strains of music. A piano, playing a slow, melancholic melody. The notes were soft, but soul-stirring, each chord lingering with emotion. Elena found herself holding her breath to catch the tune. It was beautiful, haunting and tender. She had no idea Dante played, but she instinctively knew it was him. There was too much unspoken feeling in each press of the keys for it to be anyone else. The melody carried a sorrow that tugged at her heart, as if each note was a secret wound laid bare. Elena rose from bed, drawn to the sound. Barefoot and quiet, she crept to her door. She knew it was locked, but she leaned her ear against the wood. The music was clearer here. Yes, it was coming from somewhere nearby, maybe a room adjacent to his, or a parlor downstairs with an open door. She closed her eyes, listening intently. The song swelled gently, then faded into silence, the last note hanging in the air. Elena realized she had tears on her cheeks. She brushed them away, confused by her own reaction. She was empathizing with her captor's loneliness, when she should be plotting escape or cursing his name. But that music, it spoke to the part of her that had lived with loss and longing too, the part that got up each day to run a cafe alone, serving cheerful warmth to others while inside she still ached for her father's guidance and her mother's presence. Perhaps Dante's soul was not so different, craving something it had lost, finding a sliver of it in a cup of coffee and a moment of connection. "Dante Moretti, who are you, really?" she whispered into the darkness. There was no answer, only quiet now. The piano did not resume. Eventually, Elena returned to bed. This time, fatigue and the emotional toll finally overcame her racing thoughts. As she drifted off, the image of Dante's eyes after he tasted her coffee floated in her mind, how they had softened, unguarded for just an instant. It was that glimpse of a man beneath the Mafia boss that stayed with her as sleep claimed her at last. Morning light filtered through the drapes when Elena awoke. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. The bed's unfamiliar luxury, the high ceiling with crown molding, the distant sound of seagulls, none of it matched her little apartment above Cafe Bianchi. Then reality settled like a stone in her stomach. Dante Moretti's villa. The events of the night rushed back in an overwhelming tide. She sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. Someone had drawn the curtains partly, letting in a soft glow. It must have been Valentina or another staff member, perhaps thinking it would help her wake naturally. On the nightstand, where she left her dead phone, now lay a charger plugged into an outlet. It was a thoughtful gesture that surprised her. They must have fetched one compatible with her phone model. Elena reached for the phone and connected it. As it powered up, a knock sounded at the door. 2 polite raps. She tensed. Yes? Valentina's voice came from the other side. Signorina Elena, may I enter? Elena glanced down at herself. She was still wearing the sweater and lounge pants from last night, having been too tired to change into anything else to sleep. At least she was decent. Come in, she answered. Valentina slipped inside carrying a tray. The scent of fresh coffee and baked bread wafted in with her, and Elena's stomach rumbled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since a quick sandwich during her shift yesterday. Buongiorno, Valentina greeted with a motherly smile. She set the breakfast tray on a small table by the window. I hope you slept well. I've brought some breakfast, cappuccino, cornetto, fruit. If you need anything else, just ring, dear. Elena mustered a small smile in return. The housekeeper's kindness made her chest ache with homesickness for the ordinary morning routines she'd lost. Grazie, this is more than enough. It smells wonderful, Valentina nodded, smoothing a hand over the tray almost affectionately. The signore thought you might appreciate something light in the morning. He mentioned you often skipped proper meals at your cafe, too busy taking care of others. There was a gentle chiding in the older woman's tone, as if she'd taken on the role of concerned aunt. Elena blinked. Dante knew even that detail about her habits. How deeply had he looked into her life? The notion was unsettling. He also said to tell you he's occupied with work this morning, but he will see you at lunch, Valentina continued. In the meantime, you are free to explore the house or the gardens if you wish. There will be a guard at a respectful distance for your safety, or you may stay here and rest. Whatever you prefer. It was worded as if Elena truly were a guest with choices, though they both knew safety was a euphemism. Elena's gaze drifted to the door, unlocked now presumably if Valentina had entered. Could she walk right out? Likely not beyond the estate's walls, but inside, it seemed Dante wasn't keeping her under literal lock and key, at least not in daylight. Elena inhaled the coffee's aroma. Normally she would have savored making her own, but the situation being what it was, she welcomed the comfort. She rose and moved to the table, noticing a vase of fresh wildflowers beside the tray that hadn't been there last night. Blue lavender sprigs among them, giving off a faint sweet scent. It made her think of the pinch she'd added to Dante's coffee, and she wondered if this was coincidence or someone's intentional touch. Valentina, she asked softly as she sat down. How long have you worked for Signor Moretti? The housekeeper tilted her head, perhaps surprised by the question. Oh, me, nearly 20 years. I served his father before him, and young Dante, well, not so young now, but I remember him as a boy running through these halls. Elena tried to picture that stern man as a child. It was difficult, but if anyone would know, it was someone who'd watched him grow up. He must have been different then, she ventured, curiosity slipping out. Valentina gave a cautious smile. He was a lively boy, full of laughter. His mother had a way of making the villa feel like a real home, even though his father's business cast long shadows. After she passed, things changed, so his mother was gone. Elena felt a pang of empathy. That's terrible, she murmured. He must have loved her very much. Oh, signorina, she was his light. Valentina's eyes turned wistful. Dante was only in his late teens when she fell ill, cancer. It took her quickly. I don't think he ever fully recovered from the loss. He changed overnight, became more serious, driven. And when that tragedy happened, Dante had to grow up even faster. Elena sipped her cappuccino, hanging on Valentina's every word. No one had explained anything about Dante's past to her. Perhaps they assumed she knew, or simply didn't dare speak of it. But Valentina seemed to trust Elena's gentle prompting. What happened to his father? She asked carefully. The housekeeper's face tightened, as if recalling a painful memory. Don Alberto, Signor Moretti's father, was killed. An ambush about 6 years ago. It was very violent, very sudden. Dante was just 25. He barely escaped the same fate and, well, overnight he found himself head of the family business. Though she phrased it delicately, Elena understood the implications. Head of the family business, at 25 after an ambush, this was Mafia talk. Her cappuccino suddenly tasted bitter. So Dante became a Mafia boss by inheritance and blood, forged in violence. Valentina noticed her troubled silence. The older woman covered Elena's hand with her own briefly, a comforting gesture. He has had to be hard, Kara. But I want you to know he is not a cruel man. Not to those who show loyalty and kindness. He's done some good for the people here, though you won't hear it openly. Many of the locals have food on their tables because of him. But yes, he carries great burdens. Elena swallowed the lump in her throat. She wasn't sure why it mattered to her that Dante might have a softer side. He was still effectively holding her captive. Yet hearing about his mother and father ignited her compassion. She knew the pain of losing family too, albeit under different circumstances. Still, could any of that justify what he was doing now? I don't really know why I'm here, Valentina, Elena admitted softly. He says it's for my protection, but from what? Is someone actually trying to harm me, or is it just that he wants me under his thumb? Valentina's eyes darted to the door, as if checking for eavesdroppers. Satisfied they were alone, she answered, "All I'll say is that this house has been quieter since you arrived. In all these years, I haven't seen Signor Dante react to anyone the way he did with you. Whatever reason he's given you, I think he's still figuring it out himself, dear." She patted Elena's hand again. "Just be patient with him, and stay safe. These are dangerous times." Before Elena could press for more, Valentina excused herself to let her eat in peace, reminding her to ring if needed. Elena nibbled a flaky cornetto, her mind swirling. Dangerous times, Valentina had said. Perhaps Dante truly did fear for her safety, though likely it was his fault she was in danger at all, drawing her into his world. Still, she felt a flicker of gratitude toward Valentina for speaking plainly. The staff's loyalty to Dante suggested he had earned some respect beyond mere fear. After breakfast, Elena decided she couldn't bear sitting idle with her thoughts. If she was allowed to roam the house and gardens, with a watchdog no doubt, perhaps she might learn something useful, or even find a chance to slip away. She dressed in the same clothes as last night, as she had nothing else. They were clean enough. Dante's jacket still hung on the chair. She touched the fine fabric, debating whether to carry it with her. Ultimately, she left it. Wearing it felt too much like accepting his protection. Steeling herself, Elena stepped into the hall. As expected, a man in a suit stood not far from her door, pretending to examine a painting. He snapped to attention when he noticed her, giving a respectful nod. "Buongiorno, signorina Bianchi. My name is Luca. I am to escort you wherever you wish to go." She studied him. He was younger than the knight's bodyguard, perhaps in his early 30s, with a lean build and a vaguely friendly face. Still, a gun bulge under his jacket was evident. "Buongiorno, Luca," she replied, trying to muster confidence. "I'd like to see the gardens, if that's all right." "Of course. This way." He walked a pace behind her as she descended the stairs. Sunlight poured through high windows into the foyer. The villa felt less intimidating by day, though no less opulent. They passed by the living areas. Elena caught a glimpse of a grand piano in one salon, and wondered if it was where Dante played last night. The keys would know his secrets, she mused. Outside, the garden stretched behind the villa in a series of terraces. Gravel paths meandered through rose bushes, lemon trees heavy with fruit, and ivy-draped pergolas. Elena took a deep breath of the late morning air. The rain had freshened everything, and droplets glittered on petals and leaves. It would have been beautiful, peaceful, if not for the man shadowing her and the knowledge of unseen armed eyes likely watching from a distance. She wandered slowly, Luca maintaining a discreet distance of a few steps. At one point, by a fountain of a marble nymph pouring water from an urn, she paused and turned to him. "It's all right, you know. I'm not going to jump the wall and run off." Luca gave a slight smile, almost apologetic. "My orders are to ensure your safety, signorina. Not to restrict you, but to watch for any outside threats as well." "Outside threats," she echoed, shaking her head. "So there really are people I need protection from because of Signor Moretti's interest in me?" Luca's expression remained carefully neutral. "It's possible. The Moretti family has enemies. We can't be too careful. The Signore doesn't want any harm coming to you." Elena sighed and sat on a stone bench beneath an olive tree. She looked at Luca again, deciding straightforwardness might be best. "Be honest. Have others been brought here like this before? People who Dante wanted to keep safe?" He hesitated, then answered, "Not in my time working for him, no. This is a unique situation as far as I know." That was both relieving and worrisome. Dante acting out of character could mean he was unpredictable even to his own men. That unpredictability kept her at edge. Elena traced a finger over the bench's carved arm, feeling the rough, cool stone. She considered her next words. "Luca, do you know about my father? About what happened to him?" He looked uncertain but polite. I only know what was in the initial background report. Your father died 5 years ago, a mugging gone wrong, I believe. A tragedy, mi dispiace. She nodded, the familiar pain nudging at her heart. Yes, they never caught who did it. He shifted on his feet. That has nothing to do with why you're here, if that's what you're wondering. She sighed. Elena hadn't truly thought it did. Her father's death had felt random, a wrong place, wrong time situation. But in her new circumstances, paranoia crept in that perhaps everything in her life might connect in ways she never realized. Well, thank you for being honest, Luca, she said quietly, standing up again. The guard inclined his head. As she continued along the path, she found herself near the back wall of the estate. Just beyond, she glimpsed the rooftops of the city cascading downhill. It struck her how close and yet unreachable her old life was. Just beyond this wall were the streets of Naples she knew, the people who might be looking for her now. She thought of her cafe shuttered this morning. What would her regulars think seeing it closed? Perhaps Gianni had left a note as Dante ordered. But for how long? Could she really be kept away indefinitely? Elena's chest tightened. She missed the familiar routine, the sense of purpose each day gave her. Here she felt like a caged bird, fed and watched but with no freedom to sing her own song. Impulsively, she turned to Luca. I'd like to walk along the wall if I may. Get a view of the city. Luca looked at the high stone wall that marked the property's boundary. It was about 8 feet tall, topped with decorative iron spikes and probably security sensors. Of course. Please stay on this side, though. What did he think, that she'd start climbing? She forced a bland smile. Don't worry. They walked parallel to the wall until they reached a corner where a large oak tree's branches partially arched over from outside. Here, through the foliage, Elena could see a slice of Naples beyond, a patchwork of faded pastel buildings, laundry lines, and the dome of a distant church, normal life carrying on without her. Emotion swelled. In a sudden rush of defiance, Elena's feet moved of their own accord. She broke into a sprint, following the wall toward where she remembered the front gates might be. It was foolish. She knew it even as her legs pumped, but she had to try. Maybe, just maybe, she could slip out the gates or signal a passerby on the road beyond. The need for freedom, even a sliver of it, overpowered logic. Signorina! Luca shouted behind her, caught off guard. He cursed and gave chase. Elena's flats skidded on the gravel as she rounded a hedgerow. She spotted the wrought iron front gates about 30 meters ahead down the drive. They were closed, of course, and 2 men stood guard there, rifles slung over shoulders. They looked astonished as she came bolting toward them out of the garden like a frightened doe. Help! Elena cried out on instinct. Aiuto per favore. The guards stiffened. One moved to block her path, unsure whether to point his weapon. The other reached for a radio. Luca's heavy footsteps were right behind her now. Panic ignited. She'd only have one chance. Elena veered off the drive and onto the grass, aiming for the narrow gap where the gate met the stone post. Maybe she could squeeze through or at least be seen from the outside road. She saw a flash of a car passing beyond the bars. Normal people, just meters away. Suddenly, strong arms wrapped around her from behind, lifting her off the ground. Basta! Luca's voice barked in her ear as she struggled. Stop, Elena! She kicked and squirmed. Let me go! The men by the gate rushed over now, surrounding them. Elena! Another voice cut through her panic. Deep, laced with equal parts anger and concern. Dante. He strode down the drive, fury in every line of his body. The gate guards parted as he approached. Luca set Elena down but kept a firm grip on her wrist, as if she might bolt again. Elena's chest heaved. She realized tears of frustration had escaped her eyes. Dante's gaze flicked over her, then to Luca. Are you hurt? He asked Elena, surprising her that was his first question. No, she stammered, though her wrist ached where Luca held it and her heart felt ready to explode. Dante's jaw was granite. He nodded curtly to Luca, who finally released her and stepped back. I'm sorry, boss, Luca began, sounding nervous. She ran. I didn't expect... Dante silenced him with a raised hand, still breathing hard from his own dash. We will discuss this later. Go back to your post. Luca lowered his eyes and retreated a few paces, though Elena knew he'd still be watching. Now it was just Dante and Elena facing each other under the mid-morning sun, a few other guards hovering at a distance, awaiting their boss's cue. Dante's suit was immaculate as always, a deep navy today, but his hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been raking a hand through it. The intensity of his glare pinned her in place. Elena was the first to speak, defiantly raising her chin even as her voice trembled. Are you going to drag me back inside like a prisoner then? A muscle in his cheek twitched. If I have to, he said, low and dangerous. She could feel her pulse throbbing in her throat. This is insane, Dante. You can't expect me to just stay here caged without even trying to get my freedom. You took me from my life. His eyes flashed. I told you it was for your own good. Maybe I don't want your version of good. She shot back, anger overcoming caution. Maybe I'd rather take my chances out there than be a pawn in whatever game you're playing. Dante stepped forward. Elena instinctively stepped back, but her heels hit the low edge of the driveway's curb and she stumbled. His hand darted out to steady her, gripping her elbow firmly. She tried to yank away, but he held on, not hurting, just preventing her escape. You think this is a game? Dante's voice was quiet, lethal. You have no idea what forces are at work, Elena. Last night, one of my warehouses was attacked on the docks by the Rinaldi clan. 2 of my men died. His eyes bored into hers, raw with anger and something else. Fear? That attack was meant for me. If I hadn't been elsewhere... He cut himself off, jaw clenched. Elena's heart skipped. Rinaldi clan. She vaguely recalled that name from news of Mafia skirmishes, but what struck her most was his implication. He'd been at her cafe instead of at the docks. If he had been there, he might have been the one killed. And if they knew he wasn't at the warehouse, would they try to find where he was? And with whom? Do you understand now? Dante continued, his voice rougher than she'd heard. By merely being near me, you could become a target. I won't let that happen. Elena's anger was tempered by a sliver of guilt and alarm. She hadn't known about the attack. Had his diversion to her cafe saved him? Possibly, but now... If Rinaldi operatives learned Dante spent the night away from his usual patterns, they could be searching for an unknown variable. Her. You should have let me go then, she whispered. If I wasn't with you, if they don't know about me, I wouldn't be in danger. Dante shook his head, frustration evident. It's too late for that. You think I'd risk it? If you went back now, they could still find you. Or worse, you'd go to the police, raise noise. That would draw even more attention. He was right, though admitting it felt like defeat. Elena's shoulders slumped. So what now? I'm stuck here until your war with Rinaldi is over? That could be months, years, if ever. His grip on her elbow loosened slightly, turning almost into a caress as his fingers slid down to her forearm. I don't know, he said, a trace of weariness in the admission. Maybe until I can ensure they believe you mean nothing to me. The way he said it implied the opposite, that she meant something. It sent a confusing flutter through her. Dante continued, voice softer. I'm sorry about your cafe. I know what it means to you. I'll compensate for any losses, I swear it. I can even have my people run it in your absence. No, Elena interjected, horrified at the thought. I don't want your people there. She searched for words. It's all I have of my family. I don't want it tainted with blood money. His eyes hardened at the phrase, but he inclined his head. As you wish. It will remain closed and untouched, under guard, so no one else tampers with it until you can return. And when will that be? She challenged. A muscle in his jaw shifted. He didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. Elena looked away, out through the bars of the gate to freedom beyond. It felt hopeless. She was one small person caught between forces so much larger. Perhaps Dante truly believed he was protecting her, but his presence was the very thing that endangered her now. It was a cruel paradox. A warm touch on her chin made her flinch slightly, Dante gently turning her face back to him. His hand was gentle, thumb brushing her cheek in an unconscious soothing motion. The gesture froze them both. Elena's breath snagged at the intimate contact. Dante's eyes searched hers. I know you hate this, he said quietly. I know you may hate me, but please, trust that I am doing what I must to keep you alive. The plea in his tone disarmed her. She realized this was perhaps as close to begging as a man like Dante Moretti would ever come. It stirred an unwanted compassion in her chest. She swallowed hard. And what about living, Dante? Being alive isn't living if I have no say in my life. He slowly released her, looking oddly forlorn. I will try to give you more freedom here within limits. But I cannot let you go. Not yet. Before she could respond, he took her hand. Come, let's go inside. The gardens have lost their appeal for now. His grip was firm but not forceful as he led her back toward the villa. Elena walked in silence at his side, her emotions a jumble of lingering anger, reluctant understanding, and a strange warmth where his fingers wrapped around hers. As they passed through the foyer, Dante addressed the guards coolly. Double the watch on the perimeter. And Luca, report to Riccardo for reassignment. The younger guard who'd chased her looked chagrined, but nodded, heading off. It seemed he was being removed from her detail, likely punished for letting her nearly slip out. Dante guided her not back upstairs, but toward a sunroom that opened to the side gardens. It was a beautiful space, with arched windows and a view of a lemon grove. Light spilled across a mosaic floor and a table set for lunch with fine china and crystal. A spread of antipasti, salads, and pasta was laid out, as if nothing unusual had happened this morning. The domestic normalcy of it all was almost absurd. He pulled out a chair for her. Elena sat stiffly. Dante took the seat opposite. A server appeared silently with wine and water. Dante dismissed him with a glance once the glasses were poured. For a while they ate in silence. Elena hadn't realized how hungry her escape attempt had left her. Adrenaline followed by stress left a hollow feeling that food now filled. The fare was delicious. Tomato and mozzarella drizzled in olive oil. a warm vegetable frittata, a basket of fresh bread. She ate mechanically, aware of Dante's occasional furtive glances at her. Was he expecting her to lash out again? Or perhaps he was debating how to handle her. Halfway through the meal, Dante finally spoke. I regret that you had to see that side of my life out there. The violence, the threat. I had hoped to keep it from you as long as possible. She set down her fork. You mean you were going to hide the fact that you're at war with another mobster clan? How long could you possibly keep that secret? His lips pressed into a thin line. I told you from the start, I have enemies. I was hoping Rinaldi would not involve outsiders, but they are desperate. He toyed with the stem of his wine glass. They know they cannot easily get to me, so they will look for leverage. Me, she said, just to lay it bare. His silence confirmed it. Elena took a sip of water, trying to steady herself. Dante, this isn't fair. I'm nobody. I have nothing to do with your world or their world. Why would they care about me except that you seem to care? She watched her words hit him. Dante leaned back, gaze intense. You underestimate yourself. You think being nobody will protect you. Men like Rinaldi have burned entire families just for a hint of association with me. If he even suspects I have a personal interest in someone, he'll exploit it. That's how these games are played. Elena shuddered. She had heard of such things in passing. Mafia reprisals on families. Innocents caught in feuds. It always felt distant, like a movie or a grim legend of the city's underbelly. Now she was perilously close to it. Then maybe you should stop having a personal interest in me, she said softly, though her chest tightened painfully as she did. Just let me go back and pretend last night meant nothing. Isn't that safer? For both of us? For a long moment, Dante didn't reply. His dark eyes bored into her, and she could almost feel the conflict within him. At last he spoke, each word measured. Do you truly want that? To pretend none of this ever happened? To return to your life and forget our paths ever crossed? Elena opened her mouth and closed it. It was the obvious answer. Yes, of course she wanted her normal life back. Didn't she? But as she sat in this sun-drenched room, across from the dangerous man who'd thrown her life off course, she found the thought of never seeing him again unexpectedly hollow. It must have shown in her hesitation. Dante's expression softened just a bit. I can't let you go, Elena. Perhaps it's selfish. No, it is selfish. But what I want, and what will keep you safe, happen to align. She looked down at her plate, heart thudding. The honesty in his voice disarmed her more than any threat could. When she lifted her eyes again, she braved a question that had been swirling in her mind. That coffee. What did it mean to you? Why did it affect you so much? Dante's shoulders tensed subtly. He glanced away, out to the lemon trees. My mother, he said at length. She used to make coffee just like that, with a pinch of cinnamon and cocoa. She had her own little twist. She'd stir it with a sprig of lavender from her garden. She said it was to remind us that even bitterness can carry a hint of sweetness from the earth. Elena's breath caught. She hadn't known. Last night's whim in making his espresso special suddenly took on immense significance. My mother loved lavender too, she murmured. She taught me to use it in small doses, even in cooking. That's why I started experimenting with it in coffee. Dante's gaze returned to her, gentler now. When I tasted it, for a moment I thought I was dreaming. It was like stepping into a memory of simpler times. Safe times, he paused. After my mother died, I never tasted coffee made that way again. I forgot how much I missed it, how much I missed her. A silence fell. Elena felt the weight of his confession, the vulnerability he was entrusting to her. She realized this was the first deeply personal conversation they'd had that wasn't fraught with anger or commands. He was opening a door to his past, and in doing so, he seemed more human than ever. Softly she asked, Is that why you brought me here? Because of that memory? Dante's lips curved in a sad half-smile. It started with that, perhaps. In that moment, you gave me something I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't about to let it slip away, but then I saw you, your courage. The way you didn't cower even when you should have. I was intrigued, more than I've been by anyone in a long time. He leaned forward slightly, resting his forearms on the table. I won't lie, Elena. I am not used to denying myself what I want, and I wanted to know more about you. Keeping you here was as much a selfish desire as it was a protective measure. Elena appreciated the honesty, twisted as the situation was. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. A nervous habit. I'm just an ordinary woman running a cafe. What could possibly intrigue a man like you? You're wrong, Dante said, shaking his head slowly. There's nothing ordinary about the way you make people feel. I watched you before I came in that cafe. I saw how you treated your customers, each one like family, with warmth and genuine care. In Naples, in my life, that kind of warmth is rare. It draws me like a moth to flame, and yet you have a strength under it. When I confronted you, you didn't break. He gave the slightest nod as if acknowledging her attempt to run. Even now you push back. Most people don't dare. You do it without even realizing, like it's just who you are. Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks at his words. She wasn't accustomed to such direct praise, especially from someone as intimidating as him. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to refute it, say he had an overly romanticized view. But another part, one that fluttered treacherously in her chest, was flattered and moved. "Dante," she began quietly, "I can't pretend to fully understand you or this world of yours. And I'm still upset about how you handled things. But thank you for telling me the truth, at least." He inclined his head. "You deserve that much." She mustered a small smile. "And thank you for not hurting Luca. It wasn't his fault I ran." A wry glint appeared in Dante's eyes. He should have been quicker. "But no, I won't punish him harshly. I was more worried than angry, truth be told." "Worried?" she echoed. His fingers drummed on the table once. "I thought you might hurt yourself, or that a guard might overreact not realizing what was happening. If you had made it out into the road, who knows what trouble you'd find. Naples isn't gentle to a lone woman in distress, even without mobsters in pursuit." Elena nodded slowly. That was likely true. In her desperation, she hadn't considered what she'd do after running. Just kept thinking, away. Maybe in broad daylight she'd find help, or maybe not. She was naive to think running blindly was a solution. "I promise I won't do that again," she said softly, surprising herself. "Running, I mean, at least, not recklessly." She met his gaze earnestly. "But you have to promise me something too." His dark brows rose slightly. "You're bargaining now?" "I suppose I am," she said, folding her hands to stop them from shaking. "Promise me you'll do everything in your power to resolve things quickly, so that I can go home. If it's truly Rinaldi making it unsafe, then end it. End the feud, or defeat him, or whatever it takes." Dante studied her, and she saw a flicker of admiration. "You drive a hard bargain, signorina. Is that a promise?" she pressed. He lifted his wineglass in a half-toast. "On my honor, I will end this conflict as swiftly as possible." "I give you my word," Elena breathed out, tension easing a notch. It wasn't a guarantee of freedom soon, but it was something. Dante Moretti's word. She hoped it meant something. "All right." She picked up her own glass of water, touching it lightly to his wine. "Then, truce?" His eyes warmed at her gesture. "Truce," he agreed. They drank, sealing the moment. Outside, the sun dipped behind a cloud, casting shifting patterns on the floor. Elena felt the shift inside herself too, an understanding that while she was still a captive of circumstance, perhaps she and Dante had found a fragile common ground. As they finished lunch with considerably less tension, Elena caught herself almost relaxing. Dante recounted a brief, wry story of a mishap in the kitchen from his youth, trying to surprise his mother with coffee and nearly setting the stovetop on fire. She laughed softly, imagining a young Dante with an embarrassed scowl amidst smoke, and he seemed pleased to have coaxed laughter out of her. The surreal nature of her situation remained, but for the first time, Elena felt less alone in it. Dante wasn't just an imposing captor. He was a complicated man who had dragged her into his life, yes, but perhaps not into his heart. She wouldn't presume that, but certainly into his sphere in a way that mattered to him. And the strangest revelation was that he was now mattering to her as well, against all better judgment. A quiet knock at the archway interrupted the delicate atmosphere. It was Gianni, the steward, looking apologetic. "Signore, mi scusi. You asked to be informed. Niccolo Rinaldi is on the phone for you." At the name, Dante's face darkened instantly, the warmth draining and leaving the cold mask of the boss. Elena tensed, recognizing the rival's name. What could he want? Dante stood, his posture straight and commanding once more. "I'll take it in my office." He glanced at Elena. "Stay here. Enjoy the garden if you like." "I shouldn't be long," she nodded, trying to hide her anxiety. Dante left with Gianni, his stride purposeful, back into battle mode. Elena exhaled. That name, Rinaldi, brought back the danger of their reality. She silently prayed that Dante's promise to end the conflict swiftly would hold true, and in a corner of her heart, she admitted she prayed for his safety too. She walked to the arched windows, watching a pair of butterflies dance among the lemon blossoms outside. How odd that she could feel concern for a man she'd feared intensely just hours ago. But as she'd glimpsed more of the soul behind the stern facade, fear was slowly giving way to something more complex. "Be careful, Dante," she whispered, resting a hand on the sun-warmed glass. She wasn't sure if she was more afraid of what his enemies might do to her, or what they might do to him, and by extension, to this tenuous bond forming between them. Elena waited in the sunroom, anxiety twisting her stomach into knots. Through the open glass doors, the mild afternoon air did little to calm her. She could not hear what Dante and Niccolo Rinaldi were discussing, but she sensed it was no friendly chat. After what felt like an eternity, Dante reappeared in the doorway. His face was a stoic mask again, but she could see the tension in the set of his shoulders. "What happened?" Elena asked, rising to her feet. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Rinaldi requested a meeting. A truce negotiation, he claims. Tonight on neutral ground." Elena's heart skipped with dread. It's a trap. It has to be. A ghost of a smile touched Dante's lips. Of course it's a trap. The man has never honored a truce in his life. He raked a hand through his hair, an uncharacteristically unsure gesture. He said something odd. He mentioned enjoying a good coffee, and hoped I'd found something to sweeten my bitter nights. It was a veiled taunt, but it tells me he's fishing for information. Elena paled. That sounded like Rinaldi suspected Dante had found solace, perhaps a person, perhaps her. Do you think he knows about me? She whispered. Dante's eyes flashed protectively. He might suspect I was with someone when I wasn't at the docks. He'll dig for any advantage, but he doesn't know who, I'm certain of that. Only a handful of my most trusted even know you're here. Elena thought of the many eyes in the villa. Guards, staff. Trusted or not, secrets had a way of slipping out, and Rinaldi's reach could be long. We should assume he'll try to find out, she said. What will you do? Dante's gaze drifted past her, toward the bright garden, but his focus was inward. I agreed to the meeting. What? Elena grabbed his arm instinctively. You can't. He's luring you. He looked down at her hand on his sleeve and gently placed his own over it. I know, but refusing outright would only spur him to more aggressive action, perhaps an assault on my holdings. Or even this house. Accepting buys me time and keeps him guessing. I won't go unprepared. Elena's throat tightened. The thought of Dante walking into Rinaldi's snare was terrifying. Time. Time for what? What are you planning? Dante's jaw set. I'll mirror his play. Arrange my own surprise, but I won't discuss details here. He cast a wary glance around, as if even the walls could have ears. She realized how much he lived in a state of caution and mistrust. What about me? She asked softly. If you go to meet him, what happens to me? Dante's fingers closed around her hand firmly. I'm moving you somewhere safe, away from here until this is over. She tensed. Alone? I'll send a detail with you. Men I trust with my life. He squeezed her hand, and for a moment his expression cracked with concern. Elena, I can't focus on handling Rinaldi if I'm worried about you. I need to know you're out of his reach. After last night, he might try to locate you, or at least guess at who you are. I'm not taking that risk. Her instinct was to protest being shuttled off yet again, but logic told her he was right. She would only be a vulnerability in the showdown. Still, the idea of being parted, not knowing what might happen to him, filled her with dread. Where will you send me? One of my properties outside the city, a vineyard estate in Avellino. It's quiet, remote, heavily guarded. Rinaldi wouldn't think to look there. You'll be safe. Elena swallowed the urge to argue. Safe but waiting, racked with worry, that would be her lot. Yet what choice did she have? All right, she conceded quietly. I'll go. Relief softened his features. Dante lifted their joined hands and, in a gesture that made Elena's breath catch, brushed a kiss across her knuckles. Thank you, he murmured. I promise I will come for you as soon as I can, and when I do, this will all be over. Elena felt warmth and fear coiled together in her chest. She could only nod. The preparations were swift. By late afternoon, as the sun dipped westward, Dante had assembled a small convoy. A black-armored SUV was brought around. 2 guards armed with submachine guns took their places in a second vehicle to lead, and another 2 in a tailing car. Dante's own lieutenant, an older man named Arturo, whom he introduced as someone who had cradled him as a newborn, would ride with Elena. Dante insisted on escorting her to the SUV personally. At the car door, he held her arm, his eyes roaming her face as if committing every detail to memory. Elena managed a brave smile she didn't quite feel. Don't do anything reckless, she said, attempting levity. That's my job, remember? A faint smirk touched his lips. I'll try. But no promises if Rinaldi tests my patience. A quick exchange of looks said what neither could in front of the watching men. Be careful. Stay safe. Come back. Dante stepped back and Arturo helped Elena into the back seat. She rolled down the window as the engine started. Dante leaned in one more time. I'll see you soon, Elena. Fidati di me. Trust me. I do, she whispered, surprising herself that it was true. And Dante, be careful. He nodded, and with a sharp rap on the roof, he signaled the driver. The convoy pulled away, gravel crunching under tires. Elena twisted to look back through the rear window. Dante stood in the drive, hands in pockets, watching until the cars disappeared through the gates. The countryside rolled by in a blur of green vineyards and golden light. Elena tried to calm her racing thoughts by focusing on the scenery. The driver, a quiet fellow named Paolo, kept a steady, cautious speed. Arturo sat in the passenger seat, a rifle laid across his lap, eyes keen on the road. No one expected trouble so soon, so close to Dante's stronghold. But when you carry precious cargo in the Mafia world, you never let your guard down. They had been on the road for perhaps 40 minutes, leaving Naples behind, climbing into the hills where small villages dotted the landscape. Elena's initial anxiety had dulled to a numb unease. She half listened to Arturo speaking on a handheld radio to someone, confirming their route. Suddenly, a loud pop shattered the quiet. The SUV lurched. Elena gasped as her seatbelt tightened painfully. Paolo cursed, wrestling the wheel as the vehicle skidded. Another pop. Gunfire, Elena realized with horror. Not a tire blowout. The front windshield of the lead car spiderwebbed with a bullet impact. "Ambush! Down, Signorina!" Arturo shouted. He turned, shoving Elena's head low, just as a spray of bullets pelted the side of their SUV with metallic pings. The armored plating held, but the vehicle swerved violently as Paolo tried to accelerate out of the trap. Too late. An oncoming truck screeched to a halt, jackknifing to block the narrow road ahead. 4 men with rifles leapt from behind roadside bushes and the truck, surrounding the convoy. The lead car's driver attempted to ram through, slamming into the truck, but more shots rang out, disabling the engine. The escort spilled out, exchanging fire with the attackers. Elena's heart thundered. She smelled smoke and fear. Arturo cracked his door open, returning fire with short bursts. "Stay down!" he ordered Elena, voice tight but steady. Paolo, the driver, managed to draw his pistol, but a burst of bullets tore into the windshield. He grunted, a red mist spraying as he slumped forward. Elena bit back a scream, clapping a hand over her mouth. Paolo's blood spattered her cheek and sweater. The horror of it froze her. The SUV's engine was still running. Arturo reached back and pushed Elena further down behind the front seats. "Whatever happens, don't move until it's over," he hissed. She nodded, tears welling, pressing herself against the floor. Her mind flashed to Dante. Had something happened back at the villa? How had Rinaldi's men known to intercept them here? There had to be a leak, a traitor. The firefight was intense but brief. The Moretti guards were outnumbered and caught off guard. Within minutes, she heard shouting outside in victory. A chilling silence fell except for the crackle of a small fire from the lead car's hood. A harsh voice called out, "Search for the woman! She's in the second car!" Elena's blood ran cold. She shrank into the footwell, desperate to become invisible. The SUV's back door was yanked open. Light flooded in. 2 men glared in, guns ready. One had a scar across his nose and a leering grin. "There you are," he sneered, spotting her. He grabbed her arm in a bruising grip and hauled her out. Elena fought, kicking his shin. "Let go," she cried. He backhanded her. Pain exploded at the corner of her mouth and she tasted blood. Dazed, she couldn't resist as he and another thug dragged her out onto the road. Her legs buckled at the sight. 2 of her escorts lay motionless on the asphalt. One twitched, groaning. Arturo, bleeding from a leg wound but alive. The other guard was eerily still, eyes open to the sky. The attackers were Rinaldi's men, no doubt. Rough-looking, armed to the teeth. One was tying up the surviving guard. Another, the scarred man's accomplice, ripped Arturo's radio from his hand and smashed it, then knocked him out with the rifle butt. Elena struggled in vain as the scarred man pinched her cheeks cruelly, turning her face side to side. "Pretty thing," he spat. "Worth quite a bounty. The boss will be pleased." She mustered her voice despite the throbbing pain of the slap. "Please, just let us go. You've got what you want, right?" "Me? There's no need to hurt anyone else." The man laughed, a coarse sound. "Hear that? She thinks we'll let them live." The other men chuckled darkly. Tears pricked Elena's eyes. They had killed Paolo. They might kill Arturo and the others too. All this blood because of her, because of Dante. She was so tired of death touching the people around her. "Enough!" barked another voice, calm but with underlying authority. A tall figure emerged from the truck, a man in a light summer suit, incongruous for a roadside ambush. He looked around 50, with silvering hair and cold, astute eyes. He did not carry a weapon openly, but the deference the others showed marked him as the one in charge. Elena recognized him from a photo that had been in a newspaper article about organized crime crackdowns. Niccolo Rinaldi. She felt a spasm of fear. This man had ordered Dante's father killed. He'd unleashed all of this. Niccolo approached, eyeing Elena with a predatory curiosity. "So," he said, voice smooth, "this is what Don Moretti has been hiding. I must say, Signorina, you're a surprise. I expected perhaps a political ally, a rich heiress, but a barista." He chuckled as if it were a great joke. Elena drew herself up despite the henchman's grip on her arms. She wouldn't give Rinaldi the satisfaction of her fear. "And you must be the coward who murders people with roadside traps," she shot back. The scarred man shook her roughly. "Watch your mouth." Rinaldi held up a hand. "Easy, Gianni," he said mildly. His eyes never left Elena's, such spirit. "Now I see the allure. If looks were her only asset, Dante wouldn't be so smitten. But you, my dear, have fire." Elena glared. Blood from her split lip trickled down her chin. "Dante will come for me," she said, hoping her voice sounded braver than she felt. Rinaldi smiled, patronizing. "I'm counting on it." He casually pulled a silk handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her. "For your lip. There's no need for further discourtesy as long as you cooperate." She refused to take it, clenching her jaw though it stung. Niccolo shrugged and tucked the handkerchief back. "As you wish. Put her in the car. Gently now," he added to the goons, as if he truly cared. Elena was forced into the back seat of the truck's cab. 2 men flanked her, guns in laps. Rinaldi got in the front passenger seat, and another thug took the driver's side. As the engine started and the truck jerked forward, Elena dared a last glance out the window. Arturo was on his knees, hands tied, watching helplessly as they sped away. Icy dread settled in Elena's gut. She could only pray the men wouldn't execute the survivors once she was gone. Her temple throbbed where she'd been struck. She closed her eyes a moment, trying to steady herself. Dante had promised to come for her. Would he know what happened? If any of the guards escaped, or if Arturo lived, they could raise alarm. They had clearly been ambushed by inside information. Someone close to Dante had betrayed them, likely feeding Rinaldi her route. It sickened her to think of his pain when he learned of this double cross. Niccolo Rinaldi's voice interrupted her thoughts. "You're awfully quiet, Elena Bianchi." Her eyes snapped open in surprise at hearing her name from his lips. He turned in his seat enough to see her. "Yes, of course I know who you are. I make it my business to know what Dante values. And it didn't take long to dig up the basics once I caught wind of his newfound amica." He pronounced the word friend with a mocking lilt. Elena mustered courage to speak. "If you know who I am, then you know I have nothing to do with any of this Mafia feud. I'm just a cafe owner." Rinaldi's brows lifted. "True, a civilian entirely. You're quite innocent in all this. Or you were." He tissed with feigned sympathy. "You should have stayed out of Dante's bed, dear. Though I can hardly blame you. The man has a way of drawing people in with that brooding charm." Heat rushed to Elena's cheeks. She hadn't even been in Dante's bed. Rinaldi's assumptions were lewd and invasive. "I'm not his lover," she hissed. "Not that it's any of your business. Is that so? Well, you soon will be his downfall regardless," Rinaldi mused. "Men in love make mistakes. They show hand after hand until nothing remains up their sleeve." Elena said nothing, unwilling to give him any psychological victory. Rinaldi chuckled at her silence. "Tell me, has he shared his tragic history with you yet? How my men riddled his father with bullets while young Dante crawled away through a storm drain to save his own skin? Or how he slaughtered my nephews in retaliation one by one? Quite the epic cycle of vendetta we have. And now it's your turn to join the story." His tone was almost cheerful, discussing such horrors. Elena's stomach churned. "If you're planning to hurt him through me, you'd only be proving him right. That you're a monster." The older man's eyes hardened, revealing the steel beneath the pleasant veneer. "Monster, perhaps, but I am what this world made me. Just as Dante is what his father made him. Can't escape blood, Elena. Your Don Moretti tries, pretends he's different from his old man because he spares civilians and donates to churches. But at the end of the day, he's a killer too. Don't forget that." Elena refused to be rattled. "Dante is twice the man you are. He has honor." Rinaldi barked a laugh. "Honor? How quaint. We'll see how honorable he remains when he's faced with a choice between that and you." His gaze turned pointed. "Or haven't you wondered, dear, just why your papa died the way he did?" Elena's heart froze mid-beat. My father?" The question escaped in a whisper. Niccolo smiled thinly. "Ah, I see Dante hasn't enlightened you. Or perhaps he doesn't know, but I do, Bianchi. Yes, I recall that name now. I believe my men had a little business with him 5 years back." He pretended to search his memory, though Elena sensed he was relishing every second of this. "Yes, he owned that cafe before you, didn't he? Stubborn fellow, refused to pay protection under the new order. We had to make an example. It was supposed to just be a beating. But these things go too far sometimes." He snapped his fingers. "One knife between the ribs, that's all it took. A pity. I hear he was well liked." Elena's vision blurred, a roaring in her ears. No, it was a mugging," she stammered, denial and shock crashing over her. Rinaldi shrugged. "Call it what you will. Mugging, extortion doesn't matter now. He died because of the little war Dante's father sparked. Because our kind made your neighborhood a battleground." He clucked his tongue. "I wonder what your Dante will say, knowing that. Will he apologize on behalf of our whole sordid world? Or just use it to fuel his endless thirst for vengeance?" Elena felt as if she might be sick. Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to break in front of this man. Rage and grief welled in tandem. "You killed him," she rasped. "You killed my father." The coldness in her own voice surprised her. Niccolo must have heard the promise of hate there, because he watched her warily for a moment, then turned back around without another word. Elena fell silent, pressing herself into the seat, shaking with silent sobs she tried to suppress. Her beloved papa, taken not by random fate, but by this man, for the crime of standing up to thugs, and by extension, because of the Mafia feud that had engulfed her city, the very feud Dante was part of. Her thoughts swirled in confusion and pain. A part of her wanted to condemn Dante too. Did his family's presence indirectly cause the circumstances of her father's death? He was part of that world, even if not personally involved in that incident, but her heart resisted blaming him. Dante was trying to shield her, not hurt innocence. It was men like Rinaldi, remorseless, power-hungry, who deserved her fury. And fury she had. It simmered beneath her fear, giving her strength. She glared at the back of Rinaldi's head, quietly vowing that he would not break her spirit. For her father's memory, for Dante's sake, she would endure. The truck sped on as dusk approached. They eventually turned off the main roads, climbing toward what looked like an abandoned monastery perched above a rocky gorge. Rinaldi's hideout, presumably. Elena braced herself. Darkness would fall soon, and with it, Dante would realize something had gone wrong. If any of her escort lived to tell, he might already know. Perhaps even now he was preparing to come for her as he promised. She clung to that thought. Dante would move heaven and earth to find her, she believed that. And when he came, Niccolo Rinaldi would learn just how dangerous love could be. For now, she steeled herself for captivity. She would not cower. She would fight in whatever small ways she could, even if only by denying Rinaldi the satisfaction of her despair. Her father's face flickered in her mind, the gentle eyes, the proud smile. She sent a silent plea to him wherever he was. "Papa, give me strength." As the truck rolled through the gates of the old monastery and armed men closed in around them, Elena Bianchi squared her shoulders and lifted her chin, preparing to face the darkness ahead. Night had fallen by the time Dante's car screeched to a halt at the base of the hill below the old monastery. He'd driven himself, a rarity, pushing the car to its limits once he got the call. The message from Arturo had been brief and agonizing. Convoy hit. Elena taken. Dante's blood had run cold, then boiled with rage. Niccolo had moved faster than anticipated. The meeting invitation was a ruse. The real plan was already in motion. Dante had immediately mobilized what forces he could trust on short notice. He chose only a handful of men with unquestioned loyalty. Luca was among them, practically begging to come, determined to make amends for his earlier lapse. Dante agreed. He needed every capable hand, and Luca knew how much Elena meant now. They'd intercepted a faint tracking signal from one of the vehicles. Arturo had managed to trigger a silent alert before Rinaldi's men smashed the radio. It led them here, to this crumbling monastery that Rinaldi's clan had used as a stronghold before. Under cover of darkness, Dante and 4 of his men ascended the wooded slope toward the stone walls. Cicadas hummed in the brush, oblivious to the violence about to erupt. Dante's heart pounded with cold focus. Every fiber of him was attuned to one goal: get Elena out, alive. Anger at the betrayal, someone in his ranks had sold them out, would be addressed later. There was no room for distraction now. At a break in the trees, the monastery's outline came into view. Ancient stones and arches silhouetted against the night sky. A few lights glowed in high windows and in the courtyard where 2 guards with rifles stood by the gated entrance. Dante signaled silently. 2 of his men peeled off to flank the guards. A dull thwip of a silenced pistol and a muffled cry. One sentry crumpled. The other fumbled his weapon, but a dark figure, Luca, Dante noted, dropped from the wall behind and knocked him out cold with the butt of a gun. They slipped through the gate. Inside, the courtyard was overgrown, weeds poking through cracked paving. Dante recalled intel that a subterranean crypt connected to catacombs, a potential hideout or escape route. They had to be cautious. Rinaldi likely had at least a dozen men inside. As they moved toward the main chapel building, a shout rang out. A guard on patrol had spotted the fallen ones. "Allarme," he cried, raising his weapon. Dante fired first, the suppressor spitting a short burst. The guard went down, but the alarm was raised. From within, shouts and the stomping of boots echoed. "So much for stealth," Dante muttered, casting aside pretenses. "Go! We fight through." His men fanned out as figures burst from a side door, Rinaldi's thugs opening fire. Muzzle flashes lit the courtyard. Dante ducked behind a stone column and returned fire with lethal precision. Luca was at his right, coolly picking off a man on a balcony who tried to draw a bead on them. They advanced in stops and starts. 2 more of Rinaldi's guards fell to their bullets, and one of Dante's men took a hit to the shoulder, but he pressed on with a grim nod. Dante's ears rang with gunfire. He saw the double doors of the chapel ahead, likely Rinaldi holed up inside with Elena as bargaining chip. Dante signaled Luca and the remaining guard to flank the doors. With a fierce kick, Dante blasted one door open and stormed through. Inside, the cavernous space of the old chapel was dim, candles and a few electric lamps casting eerie light. Decrepit pews lined the nave leading to an altar, and there, in the center of the open floor, stood Niccolo Rinaldi, with Elena held in front of him as a shield. Elena's hands were bound and her face was pale but determined. At the sight of Dante, her eyes widened with desperate relief. Rinaldi stood behind her, one arm gripping her throat, the other pressing a pistol to her temple. Around them, 6 of Rinaldi's men formed a defensive semicircle, and off to the side, to Dante's shock and fury, stood one of his own, Carlo, a trusted lieutenant, now pointing a gun at Dante with a smug grin. "Drop your weapons, Moretti," Carlo barked, "or she dies." Dante's vision tunneled, the traitor revealed, and Elena's life on a hair trigger. His men had followed him in and taken cover behind columns, weapons still in hand. Stalemate. Nicolo's suave voice echoed in the hall. Well, Don Dante, here we are. You came quicker than expected. So eager to trade your life for the girls? Dante stepped forward from cover, gun still raised, but finger off the trigger for now. His eyes locked on Elena's. Elena, are you hurt? Her voice wavered, but she called out. I'm okay. A bruise marred her cheek and dried blood at the corner of her mouth. But she stood strong, not wilting in Rinaldi's hold. Nicolo tutted. How touching. She's been a lovely guest, though a bit lippy. We had a chat about her dear papa. Dante's gut clenched. That damned Rinaldi. Of course he would twist the knife however he could. Rinaldi, Dante growled. Let her go. Your quarrel is with me. You want territory? Money? My life? Fine, just let her walk out. Elena cried out, no. Don't. Hush now, Rinaldi hissed near her ear, cocking the gun. She winced as metal pressed harder against her temple. Carlo edged closer, his weapon trained on Dante's heart. Listen to the Don, boss. Drop the gun, and maybe he'll spare your little lover. Dante's nostrils flared as he regarded Carlo. You disappoint me, Carlo. I treated you like a brother. The older traitor sneered. And I treated you like a son after your father died. But you were always too soft, Dante. While you were crying over Mama's grave, I was doing what it took to keep the family afloat. Nicolo here appreciates my talents unlike you. Enough, Nicolo snapped. We don't need the soap opera. He shouted toward Dante's hidden men. All of you, guns on the ground, or I splatter her brains on the floor. A tense beat. Dante could sense Luca and the other behind him, hesitating, waiting on his cue. Elena met Dante's gaze and subtly shook her head, silent pleading not to give in. Dante lowered his pistol slowly, letting it drop with a clatter. He raised his hands. Stand down, he ordered his men quietly. Luca cursed under his breath but complied, weapons thudding to the stone floor as the others followed suit. Nicolo's lips curled in satisfaction. There now, that's better. He began backing toward the altar, dragging Elena with him. Carlo sidled behind Dante and kicked his fallen pistol far away, then relieved Dante of a second handgun at his ankle with a triumphant little laugh. Carlo prodded Dante's back with the barrel. On your knees, boy. Dante glanced to see two of Rinaldi's men closing in to restrain Luca and the other Moretti guard at gunpoint. The odds were grim. Still, Dante knelt slowly, seething but outwardly calm. Elena's eyes brimmed with tears as she watched. Don't hurt him, she begged, voice cracking. Rinaldi gave a dramatic sigh. So much love. It warms the heart. But business is business, dear. He addressed Dante again. I could kill you straight off, Moretti, but where's the art in that? I think I'll enjoy making you watch her die first. Poetic, no? The sins of father upon the son, the sins of lover upon the beloved. Some biblical symmetry in it. Dante's heartbeat thundered. His mind raced for any opening, any distraction. He noticed Elena's hands, bound in front, not behind. In Rinaldi's arrogance, he hadn't bothered tying them behind her back. Her fingers inched toward something at her waist. A small object tucked in her belt? Elena caught Dante's slight glance downward and gave the tiniest nod. Hope and dread coiled tight as a spring in Dante's chest. He had to keep Rinaldi monologuing a few seconds more. You always did love the sound of your own voice. Nicolo. Dante spat, slowly raising one hand higher as if in fear. Yet it was a signal to his men. A subtle gesture they'd know. Wait. Perhaps if you spent less time talking and more leading, your men wouldn't have defected to me over the years. Rinaldi's face twisted with rage. I led fine until your upstart father tried to carve Naples in half. I'll take pleasure finishing the last of the Morettis. He steadied his pistol at Elena's temple, finger tightening. At that instant, Elena moved. With a cry, she drove her elbow back into Rinaldi's ribs and simultaneously lifted what she'd procured, one of the candles from the altar, now a flaming stub, and jammed it backwards into Rinaldi's face. Hot wax and fire met his eye. Rinaldi howled, recoiling. The gun wavered from Elena's head. In that split second, Dante exploded into action. He lunged up from his knees, grappling the barrel of Carlo's rifle, spoiling the traitor's wild shot. The boom of the gun echoed as a bullet chipped stone inches from Dante's ear. Luca seized the moment too. He dove for one of the fallen guns and fired at the thug guarding him, dropping the man. Chaos erupted. Elena scrambled out of Rinaldi's loosened grasp. Rinaldi, blinded in one eye by hot wax, fired blindly in rage. Dante, having wrested Carlo's rifle aside, landed a crushing punch to Carlo's throat. The traitor choked, stumbling. Dante ripped the rifle from his hands and without hesitation emptied 2 rounds into Carlo's chest. Carlo fell with a look of shock, blood blooming through his shirt. Dante spun just as Rinaldi regained sight of him. The older Don's face was contorted with pain and fury, his pistol swinging toward Dante, and Elena, who was directly between them now on her knees. For a heartbeat, Rinaldi and Dante locked eyes over the barrel aimed at Elena. A predatory grin flashed on Rinaldi's burned face. He adjusted aim toward the back of Elena's head, intending to execute her out of pure spite. "No!" Dante roared. In 2 strides he was there, one arm scooping Elena and hauling her aside, the other bringing Carlo's rifle up. Rinaldi squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out. Fire seared Dante's upper arm. He'd caught a graze as he pulled Elena clear. Ignoring the pain, Dante leveled his rifle one-handed and fired. The bullet caught Niccolo Rinaldi square in the chest. The Don staggered, a crimson stain spreading on his fine suit. His pistol dropped, clattering on the altar steps. Niccolo looked down at the wound incredulously, then at Dante. His mouth worked, as if to speak, but only blood came forth. He collapsed backwards against the altar rail and slid to the ground, eyes glazing over in lifeless surprise. Sudden silence fell in the chapel, save for the ragged breathing of the living. The last of Rinaldi's men, seeing their boss down, either lay wounded or had thrown down arms in surrender to Dante's backup now flooding in from the courtyard. Dante stood panting, rifle still half raised, adrenaline coursing. It was over. Rinaldi was dead, the feud at last decapitated. But none of that mattered in comparison to the woman now clinging to him. "Elena!" Dante gasped, tossing the rifle aside. She had her arms, still bound at the wrists, wrapped around his waist from when he'd pulled her from harm. He gently took her shoulders, pushing her back just enough to scan her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head quickly. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her composure finally shattering in the safety of his arms. "No, Oh God, Dante!" She sobbed and threw her arms around his neck. He crushed her to his chest, wrapping his good arm tightly around her trembling form. Every ounce of fear, anguish, and relief poured out as he buried his face in her hair. "I've got you," he murmured hoarsely. "It's all right. I've got you." They knelt there amidst the carnage, holding each other as if nothing else existed. Dante closed his eyes, breathing her in, silently thanking every power that be for getting her out alive. After a long moment, Elena leaned back enough to touch his face. Her fingers traced over a bruise on his cheekbone he hadn't realized was there. "You're bleeding," she said, noticing the streak of blood on his torn sleeve where the bullet grazed him. "It's nothing," he assured, covering her hand with his. The cut on her lip and bruise on her face ignited his protective anger again. He brushed a thumb over her split lip tenderly. "I'm sorry I let this happen